The grass is on fire, and you are walking toward it. Behind you, everything with legs is going the other way. Antelope, warthogs, birds hauling themselves up out of the smoke. The entire savannah has taken a vote on this, and it was unanimous. You're the one holdout. You've been here before. You know that when lightning burns a patch of grass down to black, the ground underneath ends up covered in things that are suddenly gloriously easy to eat. Roasted tubers, cooked lizards, seeds cracked open by the heat. So you're walking into a burning field with a stick in your hand, roughly 1 million years ago, hoping to beat the hyenas to it. And on your way back out, you do something no animal on this planet has ever done. You take a piece of it with you. Congratulations. You now own the neediest pet in the history of life on Earth. Fire eats constantly. Skip a feeding and it dies. Overfeed it and it takes the camp. It can't be stored, can't be set down, can't be left alone for 20 minutes, and it will absolutely maim you if you handle it while thinking about something else. Somebody in your group now has to stay awake with it all night, and that job is going to exist without interruption for the next several 100,000 years. Everybody wants a date for this. A night, a genius, a burned field. The exact moment we stopped being an animal that runs from fire and became the animal that keeps it. What actually happened was a long, mostly unglamorous negotiation between a mid-sized primate and a chemical reaction, and by the time it was over, the primate had been rebuilt. Guts, teeth, sleep, all of it. Fire got inside us and started moving the furniture around, and it finished the job long before anyone had a word for any of it. You already know the version they teach. Fire meant warmth, light, and a ring of safety that kept the big cats out of camp at night. Somebody grabbed a burning branch. Everybody huddled up. Civilization followed. Put that story on a map, though, and it starts to sweat. The oldest fire sites sit in Africa, near the equator, where a rough night bottoms out around 65 degrees. That is not a temperature you need a bonfire to survive, and if it were, our ancestors had the same options every other primate used: body hair, huddling, shelter, and a functioning tolerance for being slightly uncomfortable. Europe makes it worse. When a team out of Leiden combed through the entire European archaeological record looking for the earliest habitual fire, they found a hole where everyone assumed the evidence would be. Hominins lived in Europe for something like 700,000 years. Through winters that dropped well below freezing and left essentially no trace of fire. Regular, habitual fire only turns up between 300 and 400,000 years ago. People handled European winters for longer than our entire species has existed, and they did it cold. 700,000 years is a number worth sitting with for a second. Our own species is somewhere around 300,000 years old. Everything with a written record fits inside the last 5,000. Those people were walking through ice ages for more than twice as long as anatomically modern humans have existed at all, and doing it without a fire to come back to. The predator story springs a leak in a similar spot, because it only holds up for as long as somebody is awake and feeding the thing. A fire that dies at 3 in the morning is worse than no fire at all. Now you're a pile of sleeping primates with wrecked night vision, advertising your location. So if fire wasn't beating the cold and wasn't holding off the predators, what was it doing there at all? And here's the part most coverage skips. The fight among researchers was never really about the date. It's about the animal. Long before anybody could reliably make fire, something had already happened to the human body. Something that only adds up if fire was already involved. Every other animal alive eats its food the way it finds it. Drop a chimpanzee in a forest, and it's home. Same for a gorilla, a baboon, a lemur, a deer, a bear. All of them run on raw material straight off the branch. No equipment, no prep, no waiting. Try it with a person. And let's stack the deck completely in the person's favor. A supermarket, a blender, cold-pressed olive oil, fruit bred over centuries to be sweeter than anything that exists in the wild, and a heated apartment to do all of it in. That experiment has been run, more or less by accident. In the 1990s, A team in Germany surveyed more than 500 people who had been eating long-term raw diets, no cooking, every modern convenience otherwise, for an average of nearly 4 years. The bodies were quietly powering down. Men had lost around 20 pounds on average since starting, women closer to 26. A quarter of the women were underweight. Roughly 30% of the women under 45 had lost their menstrual cycles, partially or completely, and the stricter the diet, the higher that number went. These were not people caught in a famine. They had kitchens, cars, and a grocery store down the street, and they were committed enough to keep it up for years. This isn't a story about anybody failing at anything. It's a story about the equipment coming up short, no matter how carefully it's operated. A gorilla eats leaves all day, indefinitely, and remains a perfectly functional gorilla. Hand a human every advantage in the modern world, take away the heat, and the reproductive system is the first thing to switch itself off. We are the only animal on Earth that cannot live on raw food. Not won't. Cannot. Somewhere back there, we stopped being an animal that eats and became an animal that processes, and our biology quietly deleted the backup plan. Pinning down when is the hard part, because lightning has been setting the world on fire for a very long time, and a scorched layer of dirt doesn't come with a signature. The way around it is location. 30 meters inside Wonderwork Cave, in South Africa's Kalahari, researchers found ashed plant material and burned bone sitting exactly where they had burned. The particles still sharp-edged, not rounded off by being blown or washed in from somewhere else. The layer dates to about 1 million years old. Wildfire doesn't reach 30 meters into a cave. Wind doesn't carry ash that far and then set it down that neatly. Somebody walked it in. The follow-up work, published this year, is better still. Bone that has been heated gives off a faint glow under narrow blue light, and bone that never met fire stays dark. So a team walked into one of the oldest occupied caves on the planet, switched on a blue lamp, and watched a 1-million-year-old dinner light up in the sediment, a layer somewhere between 1 and 1.8 million years old. Nobody in that cave was human. This is Homo erectus, a creature with a brain about 2/3 the size of yours. No art, no burials, and nothing you'd call a language, already running a household with fire in it. Whatever the relationship was, it started so early that nobody involved was fully human yet. We didn't invent this and then become ourselves. We became ourselves with it already in the room. What fire was doing in that household is written into the skeleton. Your brain is a metabolic scandal, about 2% of your body weight, and it burns something like 20% of your energy at rest. For a chimp, that number is closer to 8. You are, functionally, a life support system for one absurdly expensive organ. Nobody gets an upgrade like that for free. And in 1995, Leslie Aiello and Peter Wheeler worked out what got cut to pay for it. They compared the organ sizes of an average human against what you'd predict for a primate of the same weight, and the shortfall showed up in the gut. Human intestines run about 60% of the expected size. We sold the stomach and bought a brain. That only works if something else takes over the digesting, which is what Rachel Carmody set out to test at Harvard. She fed mice meat and sweet potato, sometimes cooked, sometimes raw, sometimes pounded, sometimes whole. The mice on cooked food gained more weight than the mice on the same food raw. Identical ingredients, identical quantities, more energy delivered. And it means the number printed on the back of the package is a polite fiction. The label doesn't care whether you cooked it. Your body cares enormously. Cooking is digestion that happens outside the body. Fire was the first stomach we ever built and left lying on the ground. The other thing fire handed back was time, and this one you can feel in your own jaw. A chimpanzee spends close to half its waking life chewing. Not eating, chewing. A Harvard lab once wired volunteers up with electrodes to measure exactly how bad this gets, and found that raw goat behaves in the human mouth roughly the way chewing gum does. You can work on it all afternoon and still be holding one large piece. Slicing meat and pounding roots with the simplest stone tools cut the number of chews by about 17% and the force behind each one by 26%. Around 2.5 million fewer chews a year. And that's before anybody applied heat. Stone tools got early Homo partway across, Cooking carried it the rest of the way. The chimp is at 6 hours a day. You are at roughly 30 minutes, and you spent 25 of them looking at your phone. Hours came free. Enormous, unprecedented, structureless quantities of time in a species that had never had any. A creature that can eat in half an hour is a creature with a schedule. To see what got done with the time, you need a place people kept coming back to, and the best one sits on the shore of an ancient lake in Israel. Gesher Benot Yaakov is 790,000 years old, older than the Neanderthal lineage itself, old enough that the people sitting there would not have recognized us as relatives. And Namagoran Inbar spent decades pulling it apart, chip by chip. There's no fireplace left, obviously. Nothing that's soft survives that long. What survives is flint. Millions of chips of it, from tools being made and remade, and a small fraction of those chips, well under 1%, had been heated. If wildfire had swept the camp, the burned chips would be scattered everywhere. They aren't. They cluster. Tight little concentrations in the same spots, in layer after layer, across 8 separate occupation horizons. They located an invisible fireplace by mapping which crumbs got hot. The wood burning in it came from olive, wild barley, and wild grape. And this wasn't one memorable night. It's the same corner of the same camp, used and reused over a stretch of time long enough to bury the evidence in stacked sheets, which makes it something better than a fire. It's an address. For a nomadic ape that had never had a fixed point in its life, the hearth was the first one, and everything we mean by the word home is downstream of it. Your apartment still obeys the rule, incidentally. There is one spot every chair in your living room is aimed at, and you did not consciously decide to arrange the furniture that way. Neither did they. There's a hole in all of this, and it's the one that matters most. So far, everybody is keeping fire, not making it. That gap is the whole game. Keeping fire means somebody is on duty forever, and one bad rainstorm sends the whole group back to waiting for lightning. Making fire means it's available on demand. You can let it go out, walk away from camp, cross a river, move north, and start over whenever you want. Late last year, a team working at Barnham, in Suffolk, England, published the closest thing we have to that threshold. A 400,000-year-old land surface with baked sediment, heat-shattered hand axes, and fragments of pyrite. A mineral that throws sparks when you strike it, and one that does not occur naturally anywhere near that site. Somebody carried it there. Somebody had it on them. That's as close as the record gets to the day in the title. Not a day and not a genius. Just a person walking around Northern Europe 400,000 years ago. 100,000 years before our species shows up anywhere, carrying the ancestral version of a lighter in their bag. It's also the moment the fear goes away. Every group before that lived with a low, permanent dread that the coal would die and nobody could bring it back. After it, fire stops being a thing you protect and becomes a thing you have. You can lose it on purpose. You can put one out, walk 20 miles, and build another before dark. Once you can make fire, the last thing it changes is the one nobody sees coming. Fire moved what we ate and where we slept. It also moved when we were awake. For every animal before us, darkness meant the day was over. Fire pried it back open. Polly Wiesner spent decades among the Jew Hwansi of southern Africa, and she did something no one had thought to do. She recorded what people talked about at different hours. Day and night, 174 conversations, all of them among people living the way humans lived for the overwhelming majority of our existence. Daytime talk was practical and a little grim. Arrangements, complaints, disputes, the gossip that keeps everyone behaving. After dark, around the fire, more than 80% of the talk was stories. People who weren't present. Things that happened long ago. The dead. Places nobody in the circle had ever been. Same people. Same day. The only variable was the light. Daylight is for negotiating with whoever is standing in front of you. Firelight is for imagining people who aren't there. So the evening is an invention. We built it, and every hour you think of as your own lives inside it. After work, after dark, when nothing further has to get done, and nobody is asking you for anything. Look at what you keep in that window. Music, reading, Arguments, religion, sex, comedy, ghost stories, the shows you love, the friend you call for no reason at all. Almost nothing we point to as culture happens during the productive hours. It happens in the hours fire cracked open, and it always has. Strange thing to notice about your own weeknights. The part of the day you'd describe as leftover, the hours after the useful ones, is the part where everything that makes us worth talking about got made. Tonight, you'll run the whole ancient sequence without noticing a single step of it. You'll heat something up, handing your digestion to an appliance that beeps when it's finished, the part your intestines gave up on 800,000 years ago. You'll eat it in about 20 minutes, using a jaw so downsized that dentists have to remove teeth from it. Then you'll turn off the overhead light, sit in the dark, and stare into a small rectangle that glows while a stranger tells you a story about people you are never going to meet. Your face is lit up right now. Same light. Same posture. Same reason. That first night shift never ended. The fire moved indoors, got smaller, and turned into a screen. And somebody is still awake in the dark, keeping it going, telling the story. So, what's the one story your family tells every single time you're all in the same room? The one somebody starts and everyone else piles onto. Put it in the comments. I want to know which stories survive without anybody ever writing them down.